Have you ever felt that, no matter how hard you try to have control over your life, it always seems like something bigger is dictating the rules? The world you know, with its laws, religions and financial systems, may not be what it seems. Believe it or not, there are two ancient laws, unknown to many, that directly influence how you live, work and even how you think. And the most surprising thing? They are hidden right in front of you, like pieces of a puzzle that few can see. Why doesn't anyone talk about this? Well, the truth is that these laws are not taught in schools or discussed in the news. They operate silently, shaping your perception of what is real and what is just an illusion of control. These laws, known as the law of the land and the law of the sea, not only regulate global systems, but also determine what you can and cannot do, without you even realizing it. And what happens when you start to understand these rules? Everything changes. You begin to see hidden patterns, question what you previously accepted as absolute truth and, most importantly, realize that your personal freedom may be being limited in ways you never imagined. But here's the good news: by knowing these laws, you also discover how to free yourself from them. Are you ready to unlock the secrets that rule the world and perhaps even your own life? Stay with me, because what comes next could forever transform the way you see the world. Have you ever stopped to think about how, many times, we believe we are in control of our own lives, but, in reality, we are following an invisible script? The idea that we are completely free to make decisions may be another piece of this great puzzle called the manipulation system. It's like a game of chess where you believe you are the king, but in reality you are just a pawn. Governments, religions and even the media create narratives that give the impression of choice, while directing each movement. Think about the simple act of choosing a career. Is it your decision or a response to what society expects? Behind this illusion of control hides the symbology used to shape beliefs and behaviors. For example, the corporate logos you see every day, the bitten apple on your cell phone or the hidden smile on your delivery packaging, all carry messages that reach the subconscious. Jordan Maxwell, a great researcher on these systems, invites us to reflect: are we really as free as we believe? The answer may be hidden right in front of you, but it requires autonomy and knowledge to see beyond the obvious. Religion is one of the greatest examples of how the illusion of control works. From a young age, we are conditioned to obey, not question and accept imposed rules. This is often disguised as divine protection, but it can just be a form of control. It is no coincidence that many of the religious systems share similar symbols and rituals. These practices are designed to limit your personal freedom and reinforce the idea that you depend on something or someone to be complete. Now, imagine for a moment if everything you know was a big smokescreen, hiding the true rules of the game, like the law of the land and the law of the sea, which we will explore in the next point. Are you curious? Don't worry, you're about to discover how these ancient laws shape the world we live in, even influencing what you believe to be your reality. Few know, but the laws that govern the modern world have roots in ancient systems that go far beyond what we learn at school. Jordan Maxwell introduces us to two of these primordial laws, the law of the land and the law of the sea. The first, based on the principles of dry land, governs what we know as civil laws, those that control our everyday interactions, from contracts to property. The law of the sea, or maritime admiralty law, is deeply linked to trade and financial transactions, influencing everything that involves the flow of money. It seems simple, but the impact of these laws goes far beyond what we imagine. If you've ever heard terms like safe haven or in troubled waters, know that these expressions are not just metaphors. They originate from the law of the sea, which regulates global trade. Think about your bank account. When you make a deposit, the money is considered a liquid asset, a term that directly reflects this maritime symbolism. Isn't it intriguing to see how something so old still dictates the rules of our financial system? What's more, does this limit your personal freedom? The law of the land, on the other hand, is closer to our visible reality. It dictates who owns what, who can occupy a space, and even who can marry whom. But even here, there are hidden layers. Have you noticed how almost everything requires registration? Registration of birth, property, even marriage. This, in practice, is a way of reinforcing control. After all, what is not registered, in the eyes of the system, simply does not exist. Jordan Maxwell asks, are you the owner of your own life or just a number registered in some database? Now, imagine the impact of combining these two laws. On the one hand, the law of the land ensures that you are tied to roles and contracts. On the other, the law of the sea regulates the transactions that keep the world turning. This combination creates an almost perfect handling system. And if you're starting to notice the patterns, wait until you see how the symbolism works in this game, even influencing what you believe to be spontaneous. Symbols have a power that goes beyond what our eyes see. They are like seeds planted in our subconscious, shaping thoughts, behaviors, and even decisions. Think of the logo of a global company, the bitten apple, for example. It seems simple, but it carries subtle meanings that evoke knowledge, temptation, and modernity. Jordan Maxwell explains that this symbolic influence is not accidental, it is designed to manipulate and guide, without us realizing it. It's almost as if we are being led by an invisible maestro who knows the notes of our psyche well. However, this influence is not limited to the corporate world. Religion is one of the greatest examples of how symbols are used to maintain systems of control. The use of circles around divine figures, the strategic positioning of images, and even the choice of colors carry powerful messages. Ever notice how churches often have arched windows or how gold is associated with divinity? This isn't just aesthetics, it is a constant reminder of power and authority. Whoever controls the symbol controls the narrative. And it's not just at the altar or in large corporations that this happens. Think about the films we watch, the brands we consume, or even the colors of national flags. Every detail is designed to evoke a feeling or reinforce an idea. A practical example. The dollar symbol, dollar, is inspired by an ancient representation of merchants. It is not just a currency, it is an icon that connects law of the sea to your wallet. Realizing this is the first step to breaking this system of manipulation. These symbols function as a universal, but silent, language. They are the glue that unites the laws of land and sea with our daily lives. And when you start to look beyond the surface, you'll see how these same symbols have the power to shape even the legal and financial systems that regulate your life. Are you ready to dive into this deeper impact? The next step is to understand how maritime admiralty law operates silently in global control. The Maritime Admiralty Law, created to regulate commerce on the high seas, ended up crossing borders, literally. Today, it infiltrates legal, financial, and government systems on a global scale. Did you know that, technically, even your birth is linked to this law? When your name is registered with a notary, it becomes part of a system that operates as if you were an asset within a large business. It seems absurd, but it is a symbol that reflects how the law of the sea influences even the most intimate moments of your life. This law operates in a subtle but omnipresent way. Terms such as ship, safe haven, and liquid asset are examples of how the language of maritime trade permeates the financial system. When you open a bank account, you are, in essence, establishing a contract based on the principles of this law. It's as if your life were a ship sailing through waters regulated by an invisible but relentless system. And, without realizing it, you follow the currents of this sea of rules, often believing that you are in control. The impact of the law of the sea does not stop there. It also dictates how contracts are signed and executed. Have you noticed how many documents require your signature or consent? This process is a direct legacy of the maritime world, where contracts were essential to guarantee the safety of cargo and crews. Today, it has become a mechanism that limits your autonomy, while reinforcing the idea that you need to submit to pre-established rules. What if you could navigate outside this system? To do this, it is crucial to understand how this law shapes everything around it. It's almost like learning to read a ship's map before setting sail. Now that you've started to decipher these rules, let's explore an even more fascinating point: how financial concepts were shaped by these maritime practices and what that means for your personal freedom. The relationship between the financial system and the law of the sea is deeper than most imagine. Terms like cash flow and net assets are not coincidences, they directly reflect maritime symbology. Money is treated like water, flowing from one place to another, navigating between bank accounts, investments, and national economies. Jordan Maxwell points out that this analogy is not just linguistic, but part of a system that unconsciously connects us to the idea of flow and control. Whoever controls the flow, controls the destiny. A practical example of this is on your bank statement. When you receive a payment, it is seen as an inflow, and when you pay a bill, it is an outflow. This language is directly linked to maritime trade, where ships transported cargo and generated wealth. Realizing this connection helps us understand how we are pieces within a system that operates like a large financial ocean. The question is, are you sailing with purpose or being carried by the tide? The symbolism of water in the financial world goes beyond words. Think of central banks, which regulate the flow of currency as if they were controlling dikes on a river. Even the idea of saving money in a bank reflects the notion of a safe haven. However, as in any port, there are costs for anchoring. Rates, interest, and conditions often imprison more than they protect. This limits personal freedom and reinforces dependence on a system that few question. Now, imagine the impact of understanding these hidden rules. This doesn't just mean making more money, but navigating the system better. It's like learning to sail. You can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. And while you reflect on this, let's move on to the next point, where religion comes into play, showing how it uses the same strategies to shape your perception of control. Religion, over the centuries, has been one of the most effective tools for shaping behavior and creating systems of control. Jordan Maxwell frequently points out how religious institutions use symbols and rituals to reinforce power over believers. For example, have you noticed how most temples and churches display universal symbols, such as the circle, the triangle, or even the constant use of gold? These elements are not there by chance. They refer to ancient archetypes, such as the cult of Saturn, and carry symbolism that subconsciously connects the devotee to the idea of obedience and submission. Furthermore, religious rituals often follow an almost hypnotic pattern, reinforcing specific messages. Think about kneeling, repeating prayers, and chanting. All of this not only involves the practitioner emotionally, but also conditions him to accept truths without question. It is the perfect system for perpetuating the illusion of control, especially when coupled with the promise of future rewards, such as salvation or eternal life, that can never be verified in the present. But the control doesn't stop there. Many religious leaders use concepts of guilt and fear to ensure that their followers remain aligned. The idea of sin is a classic example of this. Who has never heard phrases like, "God is watching"? This divine surveillance works as a psychological mechanism that keeps people within predetermined limits. And while they are focused on behaving well, they rarely question the larger structure that regulates their lives. However, true freedom comes when we begin to question these narratives. This does not mean abandoning spirituality, but rather seeking autonomy and knowledge about what really matters. And when diving into this topic, it becomes evident that the same principles used by religion to control can also be used to liberate, especially when we understand the power of human consciousness. We'll talk about that next. Human consciousness is the most powerful resource we possess, but ironically, it is also the most underestimated. Everything that happens around us, from the way we perceive laws to the symbols that surround us, depends on how we interpret the world. Jordan Maxwell has always emphasized that to free yourself from systems of manipulation requires a deep understanding of the power of consciousness. It's like tuning an instrument. When you adjust your perception, you can see beyond the curtains that try to hide the truth. This power of perception begins with knowledge. Knowing how things work, from hidden symbology to legal structures, transforms the way you interact with the world. For example, by understanding that the illusion of control is rooted in carefully constructed narratives, you gain autonomy to question imposed norms. Have you ever noticed how a simple change in perspective can completely alter the way you deal with a problem? This is what happens when you become aware of your true ability. But awareness without action is like a map without a destination. To use this power in a practical way, start by applying what you learn in your daily life. Ask tough questions. Why do I believe this? Who benefits from this belief? Use tools like critical reading, investigate authors like Maxwell, and explore new perspectives. More than ever, it is vital to understand that the manipulation system only works as long as you blindly accept it. When you start watching it, it starts to unravel. And finally, the big lesson: control of your life has never been in the hands of others. He was always yours. With the power of consciousness, you not only question imposed narratives, but you also create your own story. Now that you see the first steps of this journey, how about moving forward and applying everything you learned? After all, true power lies in transforming knowledge into personal freedom. Now that you've discovered how these two laws govern the world, the question remains: what are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you continue sailing on autopilot, following the currents imposed by a system that limits your personal freedom, or will you take the helm and chart your own course? The power to question, to see beyond the surface and to act autonomously is in your hands. The decision to live with purpose or remain trapped in the illusion of control is yours alone. Stop for a moment and reflect: how many choices in your life were really yours? And if you could start changing that today, where would you start? Maybe it's time to review your beliefs, look for answers in books like Jordan Maxwell's, or, perhaps, even question what seemed unquestionable. All you need is a spark, that tireless curiosity of someone who doesn't accept being manipulated. Now, I have a special invitation for you. Imagine a place where you can learn more about these topics, share your discoveries, and connect with people who also want to take control of their lives. That place is here, on this channel. So, how about signing up right now and turning on notifications? This way, you don't miss any content and continue exploring the secrets that few have the courage to reveal. And before I leave, I want to know, what intrigues you most about these hidden laws? Leave your answer in the comments. Who knows, maybe your question will be the topic of the next video. Together, we can transform knowledge into freedom.